So as we've discussed already, using an activity-based costing system to get indirect costs into your products seems like it's always the superior method to assign indirect costs to products because it's fairer and it takes more information into account. So why don't all companies use ABC exclusively? And the answer to that is because ABC is not compliant with the generally accepted accounting principles set forth by FASB. Well, why isn't it GAAP, if you will? And that's because GAAP requires that companies inventory only overhead costs which are directly related to production, and that they make sure that the full cost of all of those inventoriable components is included. Well, under ABC system, some of your manufacturing costs might not be assigned to products. A lot of those will be fixed costs, like the cost of rent, the cost of indirect labor if they're salaried, the cost of utilities if they're fairly consistent from period to period, are all going to be spent regardless of what products we choose to make. We could discontinue a product, it's not going to change the amount of rent we incur. If we substitute one product for another, we're still going to need security guards who are going to be making the same salary. We need to heat our facility whether we're making one product in there or a ton of products in there. So a lot of these costs, yes, they are product costs that have to be inventoried, but if you're trying to decide from the information you have what's the best mix of products we could possibly make, well, they're irrelevant. We didn't include any of those rent costs in the example that we just did because they didn't have any effect on whether the company should make certain bikes or not. And then there are costs which GAAP says you can't inventory, which will very much factor in your decision on what your optimal product mix is. Launching a new product requires a ton of additional support, customer service, warranty specialists. You got to advertise it. Advertising expense is going to definitely increase if you have a new product because you got to let people know about this new product that you've made. Well, they have an impact on the profitability of the product. They're very relevant to decision making, but GAAP says you can't include them. And before we were talking about a whole bunch of other costs that are inclusive in here. We had, the cost of shipping. Well, that's not something that you can inventory because it's not related to production. That's a period cost under GAAP. But if you don't buy the products, well, you don't have to ship them out afterwards. And if you choose to, manufacture light products that are easy to ship versus big products, that has an effect on the overall shipping cost and the overall profitability of your company. Research and development to design new products can't be inventoried under GAAP. But again, if you're considering launching a new product and you choose not to, you don't have to pay those R&D costs. It's a very relevant thing for decision making. After it's out in the markets, first you got to advertise it again. Can't be inventoried, but it's going to be very relevant to the profitability of your product. And then some products are very technologically advanced, and the average consumer is going to struggle with them. So you're going to have to pay more customer service costs to make those products continue to happen. If a high challenge here decided they were not going to do bicycles anymore and they wanted to branch out into making dirt bikes, that there's a lot more that can go wrong with that. They're going to need a lot more customer service. They're going to have a lot more redemption in warranties because they have more parts they can break down. None of those can be inventoried under GAAP, but they're relevant for decision making. So what I'm getting at with this big long speech that I'm making right now is that ABC system is an incredibly useful system for cost accountants because it helps you assure that your company is being as profitable as it can be by monitoring all of the costs that are relevant to decisions. But since it doesn't comply with GAAP, you can't use it as your only costing method. So for most companies, you will have an internal set of books and a reporting set of books. And under the internal set of books, you will use some form of activity-based costing to help you make the best decisions you possibly can. But since it's not compliant with GAAP, on your external books, you'll have some kind of system which does comply with GAAP, which is usually a full, simple costing system.